We have an hour of lively conversation, is how we phrased it, with Faith and Judy from the Literacy View. I honestly feel a little bit like um, intimidated because they are people that I didn't know about till just recent, about a year ago. And it's like I rely on their podcasts to um, help validate my questions. And they ask always the questions that I'm thinking. And I always am just so proud that they're so brave and courageous to not shy away from the hard stuff. Um, so I did a little AI search, get a little background. So please correct me, Faith and Judy, if I am wrong, because it's AI's fault. But they are the co-hosts and co-creators of the Literacy View, which has been active since almost the end of 2021. They're going to tell us how they met later. They are both veteran K-12 educators who still work in the trenches, and they are bringing firsthand, classroom and coaching experience to the listeners. Did you know this, ladies, that you've been dubbed by listeners as the Spice Girls of literacy? Did you know that? Okay. So that is so awesome. And they tend to it just kind of depends on how many times a week they will record, depending on what's hot out there. But each episode is about an hour. And then they really break down cutting edge research and have actionable takeaways for teachers and parents. Um, they are they never shy away from controversy. There we go. And so they have their BS button and the cheers button. And so if you have your buttons, if you have your paper copies today, raise them up high. And if you're home listening later, just know that we're raising them up throughout the podcast today. Um, they also, beyond the podcast, they also offer no BS Literacy View consulting services to schools and districts. So that is bringing professional development and coaching to schools. And then this is new to me. They host a Facebook group called Real Teachers Letting Loose. So I'm definitely gonna join that as we get off today. I was looking at how many episodes have been recorded. It looks like over 123. Yes, that's amazing. Covering all topics from AI recently to dyslexia, structured literacy. Um, they are ranked in the top 2.5% of podcasts globally. That's awesome. With a listen score of 37, which just means like people like to listen to you. That's so awesome. And then this was like in your own words, it says, we never shy away from controversial topics. We break down complex research into easy to understand takeaways and provide actionable solutions that teachers and parents can use in their classrooms and at home. And I just agree with that so wholeheartedly. So Faith and Judy are on the East Coast, it's bedtime over there. It's about 8 o'clock. But they say that they typically do record at night. They're working during the day, and so they're burning both ends of the oil. So we're gonna start with a little kickoff question. Faith and Judy, welcome. And let's just jump into it. What is one book that changed how you teach? Let's just little like question to get you thinking. Who
So
wants to
first, I just want to say thank you for that lovely, lovely introduction. We so appreciate it, honestly, and uh, we're we're so honored to be here with you, truly. So the question is, what book changed our practice, our lives? This is an easy one for me. And I've said it a number of times. It's the Diane McGinnis book, um, Why Your Child Can't Read and What You Can Do About It, by Dr. Diane McGinnis. And that book literally fell into my lap in a bookstore. I was in a bookstore out here on Long Island that doesn't exist anymore. And I was looking through books because this was years ago. I started teaching in 1986 and I felt I wasn't effective. And so I was always looking for books, how I could find ways to help kids. And I had a master's in reading, and I still felt that I couldn't reach the hardest kids. So I was looking, and all of a sudden, a book literally fell off the shelf into my hands. And it was like the universe handed me this gift. And after that, it changed my life. And I started to go for my own training, paid for it myself. And I don't want to, go off on a tangent, but easily that's the book that changed my life.
Excellent. What about you, Judy?
All right. So first of all, I want to thank ChatGPT tonight. ChatGPT knows a lot about Faith and I, and it was actually all accurate. So congratulations. I also feel very honored and privileged to be here with passionate educators that are still in the trenches and are here after work hours, committed to literacy. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm with my people. So thank you. So two books come to mind for me. One book is by Wiley Blevins, who I adore and saw many times live at professional development. His book was A Fresh Look at Phonics. There was one page that talked about how to teach kids how to decode, and it was the missing piece in my professional career. And it basically explained how to teach kids how to decode in one page. And I'm like, where were these pages for the 15 years that I was in the classroom? Why didn't I have this knowledge? And as many of you know, I had a very intense background in reading recovery, balanced literacy. And for the last 8 or 9 years, I've been very committed to structured literacy because I knew that there were many gaps in the way we were instructing kids and many things that didn't align to the research. And that was my one aha moment. I just got it and understood and delved deep into my journey. And then the other book is a book that I read recently, probably about 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's actually Faith Borkowski's book, Failing Schools or Failing Students. She sent it to me before I really knew her. It was autographed, and I was like, wow, I have an autographed copy. And that book that she sent to me was my story. Like, I turned the pages and I'm like, wow. Because initially when I read about Faith online, she was like what I saw as this SOR person. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to fit in with her? Is she going to like me? Is she going to understand me? But once I read her book, it was literally my story as a coach, as a teacher, as an educator. And I was like, wow, I am definitely going to do this podcast with this woman. We are going to go on this learning adventure together. So her book really inspired me. It was a game changer for me.
Which is a perfect segue. We're dying to know, how did you meet? How did this all start? Tell us all of it.
All right, I have to start with this one because this is my literally favorite. Faith knows this is my favorite story. So Faith and I meeting is probably the craziest story in the universe. It is absolutely hilarious, funny, and amazing. We didn't know each other, honestly, from a hole in the wall. And one day, many years ago, probably shortly after COVID, there was this lady named Mary who found us on LinkedIn. We didn't know Mary. And Mary asked both Faith and I separately, would you like to present in a conference in India at the Worldwide Literacy Summit? And both of us are passionate people. And we were like, sure, that sounds great. India, literacy, worldwide, why not? So we're chatting with this woman multiple times. And all of a sudden, the topic of that India conference stopped. And then Faith and I were really getting along and bonding. And we all of a sudden, 3 of us came up with the idea of, why don't we start a podcast together? Faith said it. I said it. Then Faith named it the Literacy View. That was the same exact name that was in my head the night before. Like the View on TV, but this was the Literacy View, multiple perspectives for many people. And then we started podcasting, and, it was interesting. I don't want to get into the other person. She's no longer with us. She quit. She decided it wasn't for her. It was too rigorous. It was whatever. And you know what? She was like, good luck, ladies. I don't know if you're going to be able to do it. And we were freaking out when she quit. We're like, oh my God, is this going to still work? And we got on the phone and we called each other. And we're like, we're going to do this. And we are not going to give up. We are badass women. We could manage working full time, consulting, coaching, teaching. We are going to keep going. And then the other funny part of the story. So that lady from India, we didn't know if she's real. We didn't know if she was like a mythical creature or person or what she
So
was.
I'm going to jump in now with
All right,
this.
you go for it.
So we recently were at the World Literacy Summit. So the India one wasn't called World Literacy. It was called something else. I forget what the name of it was, but we went to Oxford to the World Literacy Summit, and we were presenting on podcasting for professional development, using the podcast as a stepping stone into going deeply into topics and being able to then differentiate the staff. And we gamified and we did all these things. And they had a dinner there, a formal dinner where it was like a Harry Potter setting where you walk in and the tables are these long tables, and they had the high table where the professors would sit. It was out of a storybook, honestly. And who do we see? The woman from India who was running this conference that Mary spoke about. We ended up taking pictures with
Wait, but
Sunita.
Faith, whose table was she sitting at? Whose table?
Ours, our table. She was sitting at our table. So we went over to her and introduced ourselves. She hugged us. We took pictures. She's going to come on the Literacy View.
Wait, one funny part. You left off the juiciest part, Faith. So I asked her, so I go up to this wonderful woman, Sunita, who I can't wait to get to know better, Sunita Gandhi. And I said, did you ever hear of us? You know, we were supposed to present at one of your conferences. She had no idea who we were. So that was the weirdest part of the story. But she seems to be very fond of us. I'm messaging India all the time, and I can't wait to get to know her. She felt inspired by us. We felt inspired by her, and we think it's definitely a story of faith. Fate, not faith.
I love that. What have you had a moment in your last 123 episodes where it solidified for you, like why you do this work? Like, was there a moment where you're like, oh, this is why? Like, was there something that sticks out to you? I know it's kind of a tricky question.
I could tell you we had an episode for Father's Day. We did a Father's Day special, and it was probably one of our most emotional episodes. And we had men on who struggled with reading in school. And these men really let their guard down and shared with us honestly in such a raw way. We don't usually see men get emotional like this about their own learning journey and about being a father, and seeing some of these same patterns in their children. One of the men was actually a parent of a, actually, I tutored all three of his children. He had twins and then another child. And I actually tutored all three. And so we became friendly. And this man was a fireman, and he retired shortly after 9/11. And I tutored all his kids. And I'll never forget when he was in my office and I assessed his children, and you saw this big, strong, handsome guy with tears rolling down his face. And he was like, oh, it's my fault. I see myself. And so I had asked him to come on that episode. And it's still, it affects me, it affects everyone. And that's why we do this show, because we are about honest, true conversations. And that probably to me was an episode that stood out as a really honest look at how people perceive themselves and their fears and hopes that they have for their own children.
Well said. Thank you. Judy, what about you?
So there's many reasons for me. When I was a little kid, I kind of wanted to go into broadcasting, and now it's like amazing. Here I am from home, and I feel like I'm on the news. This is so fun and crazy. So that's one fun thing. I'm really also passionate about kids. I have a deep, deep love for children. I work with children after work. I still tutor kids after work. I turned my garage into a classroom, and I love every minute of it. And I I know it's not that hard if you give kids what they need to learn how to read. And I truly, truly believe that all of our kids are capable. And, working in public education is not always easy. And very often, and I'm still doing it, I still work in a school. It feels like you don't have a lot of control sometimes because there's so many factors as an educator that you don't have control of. You're not the ultimate decision maker. And there's so many things that frustrate you and things that you wish you could change. So I felt like the literacy view was like a place that I had more control of the impact that I'm making. And I feel like I'm able to go beyond the four walls in my school building and hopefully motivate more people, inspire more people, get more professional development every single episode that I'm recording. So it's about like hoping that I make an impact on the world, leaving my footprint.
You guys are both so inspiring. So you read a lot of research. I don't know when you read it. Is it at night before you, like when you after work, after tutoring? Do you like
In
divide
the
it up into
morning.
sections in the morning? So just thinking about what's hot right now in 2025, what is exciting you about literacy right now? Maybe one of your last podcasts, and then what's frustrating you out there?
So I could tell you that Judy and I have just been exploring AI, and our most recent episode with Dr. Coral Ho, we were talking about really the future of intervention. And, we can't shy away from AI the same way we can't shy away from these conversations. It is here and it's not going anywhere. The same way, like the phone and the computer, it's here to stay. So I do think that that's a hot topic now, AI and literacy. And I could tell you that writing is certainly a hot topic. When I first joined the Reading First initiative, we really were talking about the five pillars. I'm sure you heard that expression, the five pillars. And writing really was not part of that discussion. So, with all the great things we did in Reading First, writing was not emphasized, even though obviously kids were writing, but we really didn't put our energy into that type of training. And I'm happy to see that now it really, I think it has, if not equal, but close to the same demand for professional development at this point that reading had. I see it now. Writing is definitely in the forefront, as it should be. So I would say those two things are hot right now from my perspective. It's AI and writing. Probably English language learners is close behind as another big one that I think is on the horizon. And what was the second part to your question? What
Is there
was
anything
frustrating?
frustrating or confusing out there?
Yeah, people. So people, the adults in the room are always very confusing. And this has been my gripe all along, that it becomes about them, and it's not about the adults in the room, it's about the kids. And it's really frustrating when you get mixed messages, even with researchers. Everybody talks about publishers, and for a while publishers were the ones that were getting the axe, like with Heinemann and the whole Lucy Calkins thing. But I think that researchers, well-meaning researchers, have to get it together and have a unified message. Because what I'm seeing now is, they'll say one thing and then somebody comes out and it's like they've never seen the other person's research, or they cherry pick what works for them. And, it's really unfair to the teachers, administrators like yourself, and parents. And I think they owe it to us to have a unified message. And it doesn't make sense if we say that science should be, leveling the playing field, then there's no reason that they can't seem to agree on what it is that we should focus on. And that's been frustrating to me.
All right, remind me of the prompt now, so
Okay.
I get this right.
So, Judy, what is exciting you in literacy right now, and what is frustrating or confusing?
So let me start with frustrating and confusing. I think that as a system of education, we're getting better at making the message clear on how to teach kids how to crack the code in terms of decoding, phonemic awareness, and so forth. I think in terms of comprehension, we're not there yet. And we had some interesting comprehension episodes lately, and it's an area that I'm passionate about digging deeper in. I think that even I myself need to continue to grow in that area. I know that there are research-based and evidence-based strategies, and I want to get better at knowing them, because through this journey, I know that knowledge building enough is not enough. It's very important. It's critical. It's a very big part of the classrooms that I work in. But I also know that there's evidence-based practices in comprehension, and we have to be just as explicit with the way we teach comprehension and how we, brain is thinking, and that metacognition and that gradual release embedded within that. So I think that the message and delivery in that hasn't been as solid. That's why we're having another episode with Trina and Doug. We had an episode with them that really piqued my interest, but I walked away not fully understanding the message. And a lot of our viewers also, some of their beliefs were challenged, or they wanted to learn more. So we're not going to shy away from that. We're not just going to throw away that topic. We're going to dig deeper. We're going to ask questions, because that's the biggest part of what we want to happen at the Literacy View. We don't want it to be a one and done. We want it to be something that, I learned this. We might do a series on this. We're actually inviting educators for the first time onto the show to review what their takeaways were. They volunteered. And then we're making it even more exciting. We're going to also have, so the first half hour is going to be teachers or educators telling their takeaways from that episode. And then we're having Trina and Doug, who are comprehension experts, come back, and researchers, to do a live Q&A. And everybody will be able to hop on, even if you're not on the panel, and type your questions in the chat, and live on the spot. They're not going to know what we're asking them. They're going to be answering those hard questions. So I think that's been frustrating, but also inspiring. And then topics of literacy that seem hot to me. Phonemic awareness is still hot. It was the first episode we recorded about when I was actually laying in bed after work in the dark, before I knew what it meant to be a podcaster. So 123 episodes ago, Faith and I knew the evidence came out that phonemic awareness should not only be in the dark, that you should incorporate letters. And we just recorded an episode that has not been released yet that again reiterates that same message, because I think some people are still fighting about this, even though the research is saying this might benefit children. So I think that phonemic awareness is still a hot topic. I think another hot topic is comprehension. And I think another hot topic that I'm very passionate about, and I think the Literacy View is very passionate about, is also talking about oral language and what that means in our classrooms. We got to get our kids speaking. We got to get them speaking.
I agree with that one for sure. Yes.
So that's been one we're really passionate about. And we're even thinking about how this should even be incorporated into our pre-K classrooms even more, bringing the science of reading right into those pre-Ks.
Excellent. I am curious from the group that is here present, if you have one or two burning questions that we can ask Faith and Judy right now. You can come off camera or put it in the chat, thinking about questions that if you're thinking about, most likely those viewers at home right now will be thinking about. Don't be shy. Okay, I'm going to ask just to help the silence for a second. What have you guys learned about podcasting that from when you started to now? Like, what is one thing that you've learned?
Judy, do you want to go first on this one?
You don't become a millionaire immediately. When you make $100 because you put a lot of YouTube videos out, you're happy and you split $50 and you say, we did great.
All right. So something I learned about podcasting is when you have something that you want to say, people could start recognizing your voice. I have people and they will send me private messages. It's like they know me, kind of like what you said, Lisa. People just start to know you and they'll type messages. Faith, I saw your eye roll there. I heard in your voice that you didn't sound like you really were buying this. And you don't realize it, but they almost become your friends when they're listening every week. Even if you've never spoken to them before, they start to know your mannerisms. They start to hear your voice, lower and raise, and they really start to know you. So even though I think I'm being discreet, sure enough, somehow they pick it up what I'm thinking.
Oh, awesome. You have a couple of questions. We'll start with the first one from Bethany Moffett, who is a professor at City University. Do you have anything like a message you like to share for teacher prep programs?
Well, is this a message that is going out to administrators, higher ed administrators? So my message is, you know what? If you're in higher ed, then you should know better. Shame on you. That's my message. I mean, really, I can't believe that it should take this long for professors to start doing the right thing. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I'm talking about just higher ed in general. You have the research at your fingertips. If Judy and I can figure out research when we are not researchers, then people in higher ed should know better and be able to know what the curriculum should look like that will help teachers right now, pre-service teachers, so that when they walk into a classroom, they should not be hearing this for the first time in professional development in school. I mean, I'm shocked that when I work with schools and they act as if it's the first time they're hearing certain things. And these are young teachers. And I'm saying to myself, at this point in time, you haven't heard this? This wasn't taught to you? And in some cases, no, it was not. How is that possible? So that's my message. If you're in a university, you should have access to research and be able to do something about it.
I'm with Faith on that one. And I think that, a lot of laws went into effect mandating certain curriculum onto state legislation. I don't know how I feel about that because I think some of those programs weren't evidence-based enough and field tested enough. But how come we didn't take a look at what's going on in the universities as a first course of action? Because that's where all the education is taking place. And those students are in those universities for 4 years, potentially learning practices that are hindering student education. So we should have actually maybe have taken a step back, or maybe done both simultaneously in some way, shape, or form. But is anybody overlooking it? I still don't really know. Are all schools, are all universities all aligned with structured literacy? Faith, do you know the answer? Does anybody on here know the answer?
Well, some think they do. Some, if you were to speak to some administrators, they will swear that, they are, on board. And then when you take a closer look, you realize that it's not exactly what it seems. So I
So
think
is anybody
they do.
so is anybody taking a closer look? This is a great topic. Maybe we have to do it on the literacy view again.
Well, I could tell you that I do think, and I've said this before, my husband is an attorney and he was the chief counsel of something called the grievance committee. And what that means is when people have problems with lawyers where they feel that something was not done correctly, they bring it up to this board with the possibility that they might lose their license. They could be disbarred. We don't have a board like that in education. There should be something like a grievance committee in education where people should be able to go and say, hey, if you're not following what we know is moral, ethical, the right thing to do, well, you might be, on a list or something with the chance of not operating the following year if you don't get on board. So I do think there should be something in education like a grievance committee. I don't
agree. And I think it should go even a step further. And I think it should be for public universities, but also private universities have a responsibility to be on board as well. We all have a responsibility to be on board.
I think you're muted, Lisa.
There we go. You guys say that a lot to each other on your podcast. I love that part. You're on
It's
mute.
usually Faith. 99% of the time, it's usually Faith
yeah,
that's muted.
this is true.
And I'm usually the one that has bad audio because I forget to wear my AirPods. And Faith is like, somebody's mic or somebody's audio. Do you hear that echo?
It's you.
Usually mine.
I've heard that. We'll come back to some of those questions, hopefully at the end. So this next section is cheers or BS. So that's where the signs come in. And so here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you a sentence, and it's a little bit provocative. And then if one of you would tell me whether you agree or cheers or BS, and then maybe an explanation, and you can each help each other. But we're going to start with the first one. All kids should read decodables, no exceptions. Is that a cheers or a BS?
I say BS.
BS.
We're on Faith. We finally agree.
I think we agree a lot. I do. I think as far as all kids should read decodables, no. Should decodables be accessible to all kids in all classrooms? Yes, that's a cheers. But that doesn't mean that all kids have to be in decodables. So.
Excellent. All right. Number 2, you're doing great. Structured literacy is too rigid for real classrooms. Cheers.
BS.
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 Tell me.
BS. Do you want to take that one, Judy?
You could take it, Faith.
So as far as structured literacy, it gets a bad rap. It's boring. It's mind numbing. Drill and kill, all that kind of stuff. But that to me goes back to the person utilizing it. And if that person understands it deeply, then there's a lot you can do to spice it up, right? We're the Spice Girls of literacy. We could spice up anything. You could spice it up and make it work.
Wait, Faith, of course we can spice. Faith, I have to cut you off. Of course we could spice it up. We are structured literacy Spice Girls, and we rapped at the World Literacy Summit on stage. Faith rapped and saying Humpty Dumpty. We have videos of it. We've posted it online. We might repost it again. So structured literacy can be fun. It could be engaging. It could be spicy. And even with a scripted program, people can still bring in their zest, their personality, their everything.
You left out one thing, Judy.
What, that I did the
I'm
twerk?
not, well, yes, I rapped and you twerked.
Right.
In Oxford.
And you know what? That's something I would probably do, maybe a little bit more toned down, even in the classroom. Okay. Even during my phonics lessons, I might sing, I might dance, I might be talking to baby Echo from Foundations, and he might be whispering in my ear. So structured literacy could be really engaging.
Can we get like a little line out of the Humpty Dumpty rap? No, do we need to go watch the video?
I think we could skip it this time.
Okay, we can skip it.
But
Okay,
you know what? We'll share with you.
Cheers. Cheers to Faith for skipping it.
Yes.
We never
Okay.
would do that again.
All right, number 3, you're doing great. The science of reading doesn't do enough for multilingual learners.
Agreed.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, me too.
Cheers.
Judy, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I could go on this one. This is one that frustrates the hell out of me. So we were privileged to have Claude Goldenberg on our on for 2 episodes. The first episode, I touched upon that subject because I'm really, really concerned about the direction of how we're supporting our English language learners and multilingual learners and bilingual learners. And he was like, Judy, you're a nice lady. I like you. We're not going to just touch upon that subject. That subject is too important. So we recorded a whole episode with Claude Goldenberg where we really dug deep into this topic. I think some of my questions were answered, but from what I gathered from Claude, a lot of schools are not getting this right. We're really confused in this area. We're all over the place. And I think we still have a lot of work to do to ensure that our English language learners are getting the right support. And also, remember, Claude reminded me of something very important, that we need to celebrate kids that speak more than one language rather than always seeing those children in a deficit model. Why don't we celebrate? And actually, he even took it a step further. Why don't we encourage more kids to be bilingual and trilingual and not be afraid of that?
The other thing I want to bring up is, good teaching is good teaching. So yes, if you're using structured literacy, I do believe that English learners will still benefit from it. But just like we have scaffolds for all children, we need to also think about English learners and how to scaffold it better. I don't think we're there yet. And it's all over the place as far as bilingual classes go versus, ESL type settings. And we really don't have enough research that tells us which direction to
Yeah,
go.
I'm exactly with Faith on that. And I think also programming is a big problem for our ENL classes. Are they learning this subject in English? Are they learning this subject in another language? How much small group are they getting? What language are they getting their small group in? I think it's definitely a mess. And I know on the Literacy View, we won't let it continue to be a mess. And we will do many more episodes on that topic.
Excellent. Last one for this round. Data walls do more harm than good.
I agree.
Okay.
I know what you're going to say, Faith. Wait, can I try to predict? Can I just try? Please let me try to predict. I'm not sure what you're going to say, but I'm thinking, I hate data walls in a hallway. I can't stand it. I think it's private. I think it's confidential. I think it's disgraceful. I don't think we should be writing kids' names and for the public to see who and what and make kids feel bad, just like with leveled books where we had level A, B, C, D visible. And no, absolutely not. I know some schools, is this what you're thinking, Faith? Have a data room. I've never actually worked in a building that had a data room. I've seen signs of them and so forth. I think I would be more comfortable with that. Although I prefer a good old-fashioned binder and spreadsheets. I don't know. I want to hear from Faith. I really want to hear from her on this one.
Well, that was pretty good, Judy. I think, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I don't have anything against using a data display for the staff. If it's in, let's say, a principal's office and they're all speaking the same language and examining it together. But I don't think it's something for a classroom display. I don't think that's necessary. But I do think that everybody should be on board and looking at the same types of things, whether you're a classroom teacher, a specialist, everybody should be looking at this and deciding on the best course of action together. So mine was kind of like a BS light button.
Love that.
But I
So,
want to add one more
ahead,
thing.
Judy.
I do want to say that when I hear the word data, it's the core of the work that I think is really important in those buildings. So even if I'm not in agreement with hanging data all over the place, hanging from like bulletin boards, I think data is at the core of the work. I think it's the most important thing that we need to focus on. We can't give opinions on things. We need to always have data centered discussions because that's what our kids deserve. And that's how we create those bite sized small goals to make sure that we're helping outcomes for kids.
Thank you. All right, the next section, ladies, is Washington State in focus. So I'm going to share a little bit about Washington State thanks to AI. So can't guarantee all these things are correct, but it sounds pretty similar. It sounds good to me. So here's current state of Washington of reading instruction. Only 39% of Washington's fourth graders are proficient in reading. There is no statewide SOR law, so unlike over 30 other states, Washington has not passed legislation mandating science of reading based instruction. There's a widespread use of balanced literacy. Many schools still rely on balanced literacy methods. There's decentralized curriculum choices. Each district chooses its own instructional materials, which creates inconsistency and then slows adoption of any SOR aligned practices. And then we touched on this earlier, just weak teacher preparation. Many teacher training programs in our state fail to adequately cover the SOR principles, basically leaving teachers unprepared and confused and frustrated. So it's kind of the current state. And I pulled a sample story. This is literally not anyone that I know. It's not me. It's not my school. It's nothing, but it's a story that I think is probably one that is indicative of our state. And so I'm going to read this, and then I would like you to say, what is your advice for this teacher? So this is Miss Amanda. She's a third grade teacher in a mid-sized Washington school district. She attended a reading league conference and dived into the science of reading. She became passionate about structured literacy. She started to apply those structured literacy principles into her classroom, daily phonemic awareness drills, decodables, morphology, vocabulary, explicit instruction. She used data from DIBELS and other progress monitoring tools to provide targeted support. She went out and spent her own money on professional development and materials, including sound walls and teacher manuals aligned to the structured literacy. But the resistance continued. Her grade level team stuck with leveled readers and guided reading, insisting kids need choice, and we've always done it this way. When she tried to share articles and student data at her PLC, the conversation was politely redirected. One colleague even whispered to her, "It's great you care so much, but we just don't have time to overhaul all of this." Her principal, while supportive on the surface, focused primarily on district initiatives and said, "We're really pushing for student engagement and inquiry or student belonging. I'd rather see students leading than scripted routines." She tried to explain structured literacy isn't about rigid scripts, but it didn't stick. When she approached the district's literacy lead, she was told that their adopted curriculum, which was a balanced literacy program with a workshop model, was research-based enough, and the district and that structured literacy was too prescriptive for our student population. However, her students were telling a different story. Um, she was starting to see growth, especially the ones who had historically struggled the most. Um, but she felt increasingly isolated, questioned, and professionally invisible. And so she reached out to find online community, listen to podcasts, do all of those things that we know to do to keep feeling like there's hope. But I think this is probably a pretty accurate view of a teacher in Washington in some capacity. What advice would you have for this third grade teacher?
This was my story. And so I could completely identify with her. Only it goes back many years ago. And unfortunately, it's the same story 20 something years later. So, when I mentioned that book, the Diane McGinnis book to you that changed my life, I started to first incorporate what I learned into my classroom. I was teaching first grade at the time. And I started to see unbelievable change. And so they had reading recovery in my building, and they were doing balanced literacy. I tried to kind of share this at the time with the reading recovery teacher. I shared it with other people, and the same story. It was like nobody was really into wanting to learn what I was talking about, but I saw for myself what this was doing. And I was not even doing one on one at that time. I was just taking some of the strategies that I learned from a program called phonographics. That was the program that was mentioned in the Diane McGinnis book. And I started to do word chains, and I started to show kids how to blend and segment and all these types of things. And it's like all of a sudden I saw kids getting it, and nobody really was that interested. And from that point on, I heard about at the time George Bush's initiative of, No Child Left Behind and Reading First. And that's when I ended up leaving and going on and becoming a regional literacy coach. Now, my advice to this teacher is don't do what I did. Okay. As far as, don't. What you need to do is just keep showing success and let the parents do the talking, because the parents are the ones who have the strongest voice. And I learned that along the way. And that's why my books were focused on parents, because I felt that in order to make real change, I saw that they are the squeaky wheel in education. And so if you have to work with people and get along with people and just, you're going to get yourself sick. Keep doing what you're doing. Success breeds success. Parents talk to each other, and then they go to school board meetings, and they are the ones who could really push the envelope. So I would recommend that, as learning from my own types of things. I mean, I'm thrilled I was part of Reading First and that I went on to bigger and better things. But I really was naive in thinking that people, just because they would hear about research in a better way, that they would all want to jump on board. Doesn't work that way. Really doesn't.
So my piece of advice would be similar, but unfortunately, in some schools that I've seen, especially the poor schools, unfortunately, the parents aren't as vocal as I wish that they were sometimes, and I'm hoping that changes. I work in very poor schools, and sometimes the parents aren't that vocal because sometimes there's a lot of shame when kids are struggling, and avoidance and so forth. So, yes, we have to empower our parents and hopefully get them to the point that Faith mentioned, where they are vocal and they are speaking up. But my recommendation is data doesn't lie, and having discussions that are very data centered with your admin. you don't have to say a lot. When you come in and you say, this is what I've been doing, look at my outcomes, word spreads very, very quickly. And people will know that your kids are successful. Everybody in the building starts to feel it. And actually, that's what's happening in my own building. I've been doing RTI with one teacher, and boy, have we given structured literacy like our heart and soul. And all of a sudden, you could just feel there's more readers in the building. And now there's more of that curiosity in the building and more of an open mind. Hey, what are they doing in there? We want to do it too. So keep doing what's right by kids. And I think that Faith made a really important point. You can make yourself sick, and there's only so many things that are in your realm of control, even in my own life. So just, keep doing the good work. And when you can't, change a whole building all at once, just know that what you're doing in your classroom matters. And when people start seeing those outcomes compared to other outcomes, something good's going to happen.
I just want to jump on what Judy said, and I agree with her. But some buildings don't even have the right assessments in place. So you're in a building where you have universal screeners, you have progress monitoring, but you could only use data to show if you have the right assessment. So just going back years ago, again, a lot has changed since I was,
Faith, that's a very good point. I sometimes forget because I'm in New York City. I live in Connecticut, but I work in New York City, and we're mandated. I forgot, not everybody's mandated to use universal screeners. You're right, Faith.
So when I'm telling this story, we were using something called the early literacy profile and ELP. And basically, the assessment was all based on balanced literacy strategies. Oh, it was a good thing if they were using pictures. It was a good thing if they were using the context to decode words. So an assessment like that wouldn't have helped me in what I was seeing. So you could only let the data talk, and data doesn't lie if you're talking about an assessment that measures what you're looking to measure. So I do agree with what Judy said, if you have the right things in place. So
You guys work off each other so well. It's like a beautiful symphony. All right, little cliche, a little cheesy. All right, last section, and we're just gonna wrap up, and then maybe we'll have time for a couple of those questions there. So what is one thing every literacy leader, so leader could be teachers, admin, just anyone passionate about literacy and trying to move that work wherever they are, what is something they should start doing tomorrow, and one thing that we should leave behind?
Judy, should I go or do you want to go first?
I'm fine with you going first, Faith.
All right. I think a literacy leader, what's something that they could do tomorrow? Is that what you're saying? And something that they should leave behind? All right. I think that they should leave behind the whole talk of kids as letters. This one's a letter D, this one's a letter M, this one's, labeling kids as letters. I think parents, teachers, administrators, starting tomorrow, let's not call kids by a letter. This one is an M. That we want to just change that. And that's an easy fix. If you're talking about tomorrow, that's an easy fix. Something that we can start doing tomorrow is really just having, if I'm an administrator, I want teachers listening to kids read out loud, one-on-one, where they can really pick up certain things. Are they accurate? Are they reading this fluently? I don't think kids are reading enough, period. I don't think they're reading enough. And I don't think that teachers are listening to kids read enough. And I think that parents should be encouraged to listen to kids read more, even as kids get older. I know just in a tutoring situation, I'll ask parents, so how does your child sound when he or she reads out loud? And then they'll look at me and say, because this kid is 9, I really haven't listened to him read out loud. And I'm like, you know what? It's a good idea to listen. You'll learn a lot just by listening. And sure enough, they will see for themselves that the grade that they were told in school doesn't make sense based on just how they're reading. So I would say, quick thing is make sure that all teachers are listening to kids read aloud more often, and have that one-on-one time, and to get rid of labeling kids by a letter.
I think that was really powerful stuff, Faith. It's amazing how so many of our thoughts align, Faith. It's wild because I just wanted to mention I met with Acadians. They came to my school because I asked for professional development because I need to continue to push myself. And that was the one recommendation that they gave me to shift my outcomes. I actually created a template using ChatGPT, Lisa, where the recommendation was listen to even if your teachers are doing small group, even if the tier 1 is fine, we're not listening to kids read enough, which is what Faith said. So I created a template. One column says accuracy, one column says fluency, and there's a line for listen to 5 kids a day, see how they were in terms of accuracy, see how they were in terms of fluency, write a couple of notes, and that way you're listening to your kids reading every day, different kids, providing specific feedback, and also making sure that the application piece of reading is prioritized. That's the number one thing that I want everybody to walk away with, knowing that, yes, we do a lot of great things in isolation and our phonics, our phonemic awareness, but if we don't give kids that chance to read, and we don't listen to those kids read and apply those skills that they're learning in isolation, we're not going to get far enough. And I want also to remind everybody, it might be May 14th. It is not too late to shift outcomes. Don't pack up your bags. Don't think about those margaritas that you're going to drink on the beach yet. Keep listening to those kids read, and also be strategic about how you're testing those kids. I sent out a memo to my teachers about procedures for screening out kids. I suggested test your blue kids first. And I'm not calling them the blue kids. They're not blue. I'm not, but test your ones that are, not struggling first. And then give the kids that are struggling as much as you can for the next month and a half of school, because you can change outcomes. Every day matters for those kids. So that's my number one recommendation is wait, give those kids that are struggling a little bit more love and attention. It's crunch time. And I agree with Faith, no leveling. What was the other prompt? Did I miss something, Lisa?
I think you got it. Or one thing we should leave behind. Did you say that one?
One thing that we should leave behind is those prompts that many of us used to use, which is, does it make sense? Does it sound right? Does it look right? Like stop it. Don't do that. Especially for our early readers. Yes, integration is important for kids, and we know meaning is important. But when kids are just learning how to read, stop overloading their brains and prioritize looking at the word and decoding and looking at, the letters and the orthography.
Okay, we have a few more. I'm going to go a few more minutes because you said I could. There's a couple of questions. Brandy asked, are there any programs you'd recommend for teachers in special ed who want to implement science of reading in our teaching? She's been modifying her general ed programs, and though her students are reading now, she feels like it needs to go faster to catch them up. That's a great question.
Yeah, so we had a guest on, Anne Sullivan. No, not Helen Keller's teacher, but her name really is Anne Sullivan. And she really has some great work that is a great scaffold for anybody using a phonics program. and she really addresses kids, nonverbal kids, using ways that they could show their answer even if they can't speak. I would highly recommend Anne Sullivan's work, and she has books out there. So I would say to that teacher, there are people and programs that do address kids with special needs. I also think, quite honestly, that just in general, a speech to print approach can be very helpful for those kids who might not have done well with an Orton Gillingham approach. Sometimes that works better. I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but maybe she should look into just the speech to print approach in general. But in particular, Anne Sullivan might be somebody good to look into. And we did an episode with her. So if you look at the Literacy View, I don't remember which number it is, but if you look up Literacy View, Anne Sullivan, look for that episode.
I just want to chime in. I'm still struggling with this in terms of like the other component of literacy for special education for the ELA, because we know that there's like the phonics portion and phonemic awareness portions. I think schools are getting better at making those selections, but I think that in terms of special education, a lot of schools have not gotten it right in terms of special education. I think some of these programs for like kids that I see, nationwide that are nonverbal, and all of a sudden they're being given these programs that are so intense and rigorous, and not teaching these kids how to read and prioritizing that, it could be very, very, very overwhelming. So to all the special education teachers that are dealing with these programs that are now being mandated, that may have not thought about those kids very carefully, I hear you, I feel you, I'm struggling too. And I know it's very frustrating when administrators will often say, no, this is what you're using, and they didn't really think about all our learners. So I'm still struggling with that. So I cannot, for knowledge building, give my full recommendation for that part of the literacy block. I'm struggling with that a little bit for some classrooms, not for all classrooms, but for some classrooms.
Thank you. It looks like Maria is saying it seems as though the impacts of inequity is she was in the car when she was typing this, is emerging and is an emerging and important part of structured literacy. How are you seeing people address that as it impacts background knowledge? Maria, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that question.
Sorry,
So I just want to be clear on the question, Maria. So
yeah.
are you asking in terms of that some kids lack the background knowledge to be able to understand what they're reading, and how would we work with that? Is that the question?
Yes, I'm working with underserved communities, and
Mm-hmm.
we know literacy tracks with wealth and race, etc. And this is a big unexplored area, at least as far as I can tell. So much
Mm-hmm.
about structured literacy is very well articulated, and the art is in what you do and how. And I just interested in how you might see, I know it's kind of a flyer question, but how you see people addressing inequity.
Yeah. So, I mean, Judy is a literacy coach in a building. Certainly, population that she works with is would be considered that population that you're
Yeah, I
talking.
work in one of the poorest districts in New York City. I actually coach in District 9, and it's amazing to see how our kids are thriving in my building. I've been a coach in this particular building site for about 3 years, and I'm finally seeing the fruits of my labor pay off. So the first recommendation that I have is be very patient. Change takes time. The other big game changer in my building this year, is believing in our kids and knowing that they know a lot more than we expect, and that their experiences might not look like exactly like some other kids' experiences, but they do have their own set of experiences. And I wish that our quote unquote programs that are being mandated thought about that more, because they don't think about our kids enough, including our universal screeners. A lot of these passages are not relevant to our children's lives. So I know a lot of screener companies are actually revising, and they've heard my voice, and many voices say, you know, experiences change and what's important to our kids might look very different. But here's been one thing that's been very impactful. So I've been working with a trainer actually from Foundations that, you know, trained me. And he said, why are we always telling kids what words mean? Like, oh, do you know what this word means? Why don't we hear from our kids and make vocabulary become more of an experience and eliciting knowledge from our kids? It's been a game changer in our building. So instead, like, even for instance, we were doing a phonics lesson today and the word was thank. And I said, guys, instead of saying, does anybody know what thank means? I said, hey guys, has anybody here ever been thankful for something, like at their Thanksgiving Day table? And oh my God, the responses from our children just exceeded all expectations. So give our children the chance to talk, give our children the chance to share their experiences, and don't just assume that they don't have, you know, something to share. That's been a big game changer for me. Faith, I'd love to hear a little bit from you, but just believe in those kids because they need us. But, you know, we can't always see them from like a light that, you know, that they don't have experiences. They do. And their experiences matter too. And all these knowledge building people out there that are screaming that, you know, we have to build certain knowledge. Think about our kids and know that their knowledge matters too.
Yeah, so I could just say, look, I would go into districts that all got the Reading First grant. And, you know, you don't have to really know about Reading First, just realize it was something that happened years ago. And it was about getting structured literacy, which we called at the time, you know, SBRR, science based reading research, into schools that really needed it. So I would go into districts that were what you're talking about, underserved communities. And my advice is never assume. Never assume. It's like the odd couple, right? Unless you make an ass out of you and me. And so that is my advice when you're talking about background knowledge, when you're talking about any of this. Never assume that they have it and never assume that they don't have it. You have to really just have an open mind. That's my advice.
Great. Thank you both.
Can I give one other piece of advice? Let's get our educators to move away from speaking about what kids can't do. It is my biggest pet peeve when I still coach in general, when I hear people make excuses. We have to stop. We have to start thinking and reflecting, what can we do differently? And I will say something that might be a little bit controversial. That mindset for me actually did start in my reading recovery days. That's where I was trained to think about what I could do differently. And that's something, a core value that I believe in. And I think that's one of the biggest core values that I hope that my teachers take away. Instead of saying, they can't do it, they can't do it, they can't do it, what could we do differently? That one little change can change lives. And I work really hard to shift teachers in that mindset. And it's not very easy. I'll go into classes and I'll hear sometimes like, oh, it's a bad day, or you came at a bad time. The kids don't have time for us to say that. We have to always plan for our children. We have to always be intentional. And yes, we all have bad days. I had days where I came to work looking like a hot mess with my, you know, didn't sleep at night, went through a divorce. Yes, we all have bad days, but our kids need us to always be intentional, especially in those schools where we have a lot of kids that are from poor socioeconomic backgrounds, we need to give it 100%. Those kids deserve it because they can stand up to the plate if we're prepared.
Well said, Judy and Faith. I have squeezed out as much time I think that is allowable. I've gone until 6:15, which is 9:15 your time. It is bedtime for the two of you. I was just writing down some P words. I'm going to share them. These words remind me of you too. I was thinking of pep and pizzazz. So then I was like, purpose. You're both driven by a strong purpose and core values. Passion, professionalism, presence, positivity, and your partnership it's electric. Fate came together to bring you together, and we just, on behalf of the Reading League Washington, appreciate your time tonight. We've recorded this. We know that there's going to be many that watch it. We'll send it to you. You can put it wherever you want to put it, right, Bethany? They can stick it wherever. You can do whatever you want. There's
Faith,
probably
I would love to upload this episode on the Literacy View also. I would absolutely love to. I think that I just got to give a shout out to you guys. I'm sorry to interrupt, but wow, I'm so happy we met you. You are a dynamic group of people. The way you organize, the questions you ask, the energy you brought into this space. I feel like we have new friends, and I can't wait to have you guys as guests on the Literacy View because you can just feel that passion, that pizzazz, all those beautiful things from you guys. And I think we met a whole bunch of new friends tonight, Faith. Would you agree?
I think we met our new no BS besties, as we would say. So, you know what? You definitely are. And we would be honored to bring you on with us when the topic presents itself, because we're always about topics first, and then we think about the people who would work with that topic well. So we will definitely keep you in mind. And this was so much fun. Again, we were honored to be here. Thank you for thinking of us. And for anybody who wants to visit our website and see where they could find these episodes, they can go to theliteracyview.com.
Excellent. All right. Faith and Judy, just stay online for